Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your interest in the topic. So we can say that the whole administrative framework with banks is difficult, even if you are Swiss, even if you live in the country you are born. So what about newcomers in the countries? I will show you some examples of situations faced by its refugees, and maybe it rings a bell with you. So sometimes you really face the difficulties with banks. Here again, you don't speak the language, you don't have a working permit, it's not possible, you need to have pay slips and so on. But in Europe, opening a bank account is a right. It's not the case everywhere, unfortunately. It has to be taken for granted. But we'll see here how the financial inclusion can really foster the inclusion for people with refugee and migrant background. So welcome to this session. We'll have a short introduction on the subject, and then we'll leave the floor to the panelists. We have the chance to have 4 panelists today, specialists of the subject we are talking about, and also leave some space for the Q&As. So I'm Mary-Lou. I work at Singa. At Singa, we promote entrepreneurship as a viable way to get integrated in Switzerland. And unfortunately, my co-organizer and colleague Ines cannot be there because of COVID. So Ines, if you're looking at us. And I have a great co-organizer as well, which is Paola for Home Swiss blockchain. The moderator will be Alexandre Maza from the Cardano Foundation. So let's dive a bit into what's the current context about migration. Today, 82 million people are immigrants, which makes about 1% about the world population. And according to the UN projection, this number will rise to 200 million by 2050. We can say there are about 110 million people forcibly displaced at the end of 2022, just to give you an idea. So every day, people around the world are leaving their countries in search of better lives, but who are they? There are many categorizations. So different category to talk about people on the moves. We have refugees. Refugee is a status which is recognized by states. We have IDPs, internally displaced people who are moving internally of their country, and asylum seekers. These 3 categories are forcibly displaced persons. So unlike these people, migrants and immigrants, as we call them, are able to go back to their home country. So at Singa, we try to give this new trend of talking about newcomers and local people. To give you an idea about the countries of origins and host countries in 2022, so as you can see, internationally displaced Ukrainians equal the one from Afghanistan, but for sure we can say that they didn't have facing the same problems with financial inclusion. So many means have been put in place for Ukrainians to get more financially included in Europe, but for Afghans, for sure, it's not the case right now. Also, as you can say, in host countries, in Europe, we tend to think that we host majority of the refugees, but except for Germany, this is really not the case. I will just now leave the floor to Paola to talk to you about what's the challenges these people are facing right now.
Thank you, Mary-Lou. So thank you again for everyone to being here. It's a very, very important subject, especially when we are looking at all the current situation with polycrisis and climate change, and this is not looking better. So it's great too that we will have a fabulous panel here. In the absence of Ines, I will take over the challenges. So We have heard some insightful general facts about refugees, highlighting the unprecedented challenges. And now I want to take a moment to delve deeper into these challenges for refugees and migrants when they go to a new place. So one, let's consider the issue of a decent work. Many migrants and refugees find themselves trapped in a cycle of precarious employment, often working in low-wage jobs, which fail to use their skills and potential. This underemployment not only stifles their economic independence, but also prevents from making meaningful contributions to their host communities. It's a lose-lose situation where talents remain untapped and economies miss out on the diverse skills these individuals bring with them. Second, social justice. It remains an elusive goal for many refugees and migrants. Discrimination, language barriers, and a lack of recognition for their qualifications create formidable obstacles for their full integration into society. These barriers can lead to feelings of isolation and exclusion, eroding their sense of belonging and well-being. And I mean, we all have some bad days. Just imagine for them, every day feels like a bad day. Third, and perhaps most critically, is the issue of access to basic rights. Refugees and migrants often grapple with limited access to essential services such as healthcare, education, and housing. These are not just amenities. These are fundamental rights that should be accessible to all. The absence of these services perpetuates social injustice, hinders their ability to lead self-sufficient lives, and exacerbates the challenges they face. And I also like to include, because I'm a technology advocate, it's also a human right to have connectivity, because they want to see what's going on their country, in their home country, try to find their family and so on. So also connectivity is really an important subject, and they have right to this. So what's the connection between these challenges and our session today? How can the financial sector play a transformative role in addressing these pressing issues and fostering the integration and refugees and migrants? So for this, I will ask my colleague Alexander to dive more. Just so you know, Alexander Massa leads the Impact and Sustainability initiatives at the Cardano Foundation, and he develops partnerships in the interaction between blockchain and sustainability. So I work very close with him.
Hi, good afternoon. So you must be wondering, what does a blockchain person do on stage when we're talking about financial inclusion of refugees and migrants? Well, personally, I have family that has been through this journey. My father was an economic migrant from Algeria, and my uncle was a refugee from Iran. Now, enough about me, and more importantly, about this wonderful text that Ines, hopefully she's watching back home, wrote for us. So here we'll focus on the financial aspects of this particular thematic area. So what's the connection? The financial sector is uniquely positioned to be a catalyst for change. By providing refugees and migrants with access to adequate financial products and services, it can empower them to take control of their financial lives and contribute meaningfully to host communities. This includes access to savings accounts, microloans, and financial education, which are essentially tools for economic self-sufficiency. Now, when we look at the journey of refugees and migrants, it's clear that their settlement poses unique challenges. Imagine arriving in a new country, often with little more than your clothes on your back. You may not speak the language or understand the local customs. Finding a job, securing housing, and accessing healthcare can become monumental tasks. Now, these challenges can leave individuals in a vulnerable state, dependent on the goodwill of others. And this is where the financial sector can have a significant impact. And it's not just about traditional banking services. Financial institutions can offer innovative solutions that go beyond banking. Think digital payment platforms, microfinancing for small businesses, and tailored financial literacy programs. These solutions have the ability to transform the lives of refugees and migrants globally, helping them not only survive, but thrive in new environments. But the obstacles don't end there. Even after overcoming initial settlement challenges, refugees and migrants often face a second set of bottlenecks where they aspire to settle more permanently. And this is a topic that we'll explore in the panel. Many encounter legal barriers that prevent them from obtaining work permits or accessing financial services. So how can the financial sector, which we're bringing here at Building Bridges, respond to these bottlenecks? What are the innovative approaches that can bridge these gaps and empower refugees and migrants to achieve true financial inclusion and self-sufficiency? As we move forward, I engage you in a thoughtful dialogue about how we can collectively harness the power of the financial sector to create positive change today and tomorrow. Together, we will embark on a journey to uncover innovative solutions, share insights, and ultimately pave the way for a brighter future for refugees and migrants. So I look forward to the enlightening discussion ahead, and I'm confident that by the end of our session, here and online, you'll be intrigued by the transformative role that the financial sector can play in addressing these challenges. Thank you for your attention, and let's continue to build bridges towards a more just and inclusive society for all. Thank you.
Just a few highlights about how the co-organizers are working on an everyday life to foster this financial inclusion for people with refugee or migrant experience. So at Singa, we strongly believe that everyone can reveal their potential no matter where they come from. So our vision is really the one of an inclusive society where everyone has access to the same opportunities to fulfill their potential. And our mission on a daily basis is to provide newcomers tools to obtain entrepreneurial competencies and professional network in order to participate equally in the local system. Our goal is to promote entrepreneurship as a viable way to be professionally and financially included in Switzerland. So Singa is now an organization that is in more than 17 cities, 18 cities right now, 7 countries, and we really tend to bring together newcomers and local. So in Switzerland, we really focus on the entrepreneurial programs, and the target group that we are working with are improving their professional situations as well as their financial situation by creating companies. For sure, we are facing some difficulties for the entrepreneurs to have loans, to secure some funding, also to get more visibility in the fundraising, because it tends to be very local people, I would say even more in Switzerland and from the highest school, graduating from the highest school that gets the fundraising from the investor, but there are lots of potential to unleash from the migration perspective. So today we have many programs from different stages of a company. You can just come and see us just for having a feedback on the idea you want to develop. And our partners, as you can see, are funding us, but we are still looking to expand our program, to expand our services, to include more people on a daily basis here. So if it speaks to you, if you are in an organization or a company, you can really become a new partner financially, but also to support us in our daily activities. Now it's Paola, who is also working on a daily basis with...
Thank you. Mine is very quickly. I'm the director of the Home of Blockchain, which is a public-private organization. We got from the mandate from the Ministry of Finance to promote Switzerland as a hub for blockchain technology. And we have 3 pillars, basically. One is blockchain for good, where we like to support projects that implement blockchain for sustainability projects. or like with different United Nations organizations. And this brings building trust with technology. We also work on digitalization of digital assets. And we also have the industrial applications, which you can apply for tracing materials and all technology can be really an enabler to help the world to solve many problems, but the people need to be willing to use it. And an example is the Bank of International Settlements just recently finished the Project Atlas, which will be a platform to evaluate the macroeconomic of crypto assets and DeFi. And because the digitalization, the digital remittances are increasing dramatically, so, or at least in a very fast speed. So another thing we're doing is we are sharing the Swiss way of freedom and responsible innovation. It's not only blockchain, but it starts to merge a little bit with artificial intelligence, drones, and so on. And as I said, it's blockchain for good, industry and digital assets. And basically, we are an enabler. We are connecting people, organizations. Sometimes it doesn't have to do with technology per se, blockchain, but we are there to help out in some way to make things better. So that's about the home of blockchain. And I have there we go. And now again, I return now to Alexander Massa. Thank you.
Does this work? Oh, it works. Thanks, Paula. So now, without further ado, we'll jump into our panel, where we'll explore the arrival, the next steps, and what can the financial sector do. So with that, I'd like to invite our panelists up on stage. Okay, we're all upstage and we're all comfortable. So if I could ask you one first question is to introduce yourselves one by one, first with Carmen, and let us know why you, in your function, are here at Building Bridges today and this week.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carmen Head. I'm UNHCR's treasurer. And I'm here today basically to look at public-private partnerships so we can build solutions that really sustain these bridges.
Hi, my name is Rou Savar. I'm a co-founder and the CEO of Welcome Account, which is a neobank for newcomers. Myself, I'm a refugee. I came to France 15 years ago as a refugee, and the mission of a Welcome Account is to provide fair and customized banking and financial service for every newcomers, especially refugee people.
Hello everyone, I'm Yusra Hamid. I work for the ILO, the International Labour Organization. It's a UN agency that is dealing with the world of work with a vision to provide decent work for all. And when we say all, it means entrepreneurs, it means migrants, it means refugees. And so this is one of the things on which I am working on a daily basis, so how we can facilitate, avail access to finance for refugees.
Good afternoon. I'm Francesco Di Salvo. I work at the World Bank on topics of financial inclusion and digital financial services, but as well programs to support migrants and the poor of every country. And so in this case, the idea is to build a bridge between the financial sector and migrants that are arriving in a country and they are looking to be integrated. Thank you. Fantastic.
And now we move to the first round of questions about arrival. First, on my left, Carmen, what has your experience been with the topic of access to financial services for refugees in the case of UNHCR when they arrive at their destination?
Yes, so this is obviously very important to be able to provide the basic needs as the refugees or internally displaced, internally in the country, or refugees going to another country. The needs that they need, the basic needs, so we need to make sure that we have payment rails available to provide the assistance, the aid assistance in cash. So more and more, we actually provide cash assistance instead of blankets or you know other utensils. So we give the dignity to the people upon arrival, and this is very often the first step to look at how we structure really that access to financial means for the people on the move. And as we have heard, there are a lot of people on the move, so there are 110 million forcibly displaced worldwide. So we need to have solutions that are really very effective and efficient upon arrival.
Fantastic. And Ru, you have personal experience with this, but also business experience with this topic. What was your experience like, and what can the role of the financial sector be in this specific case?
Actually, yeah, I have this experience when I arrived in Europe, in France, as a journalist and political refugee. To have access to financial system, bank account, payment solution wasn't difficult. It wasn't possible when you don't have the right paper, the right situation. I figured out there is a lot of person around me that they share the same pain. Several years later, I decided to create this neobank. It was a crazy idea because yeah, when you are a excluded person of this system and you try to solve the problem, and I'm not from financial. I don't have a financial background, nor financial studies. But we figured out with my team that actually the access legally, especially in Europe, it's easier than we think legally. People can have a payment card or a bank account, an IBAN just to receive and spend money. But their profile do not included in normal business model of banks. It's not because they are bad people. This is because the regular bank and neobanks as well don't consider this person, this population, as an asset, but as a risk. The idea is newcomers, especially refugee people, are a huge risk for banks. But we know, as you said, for the person, but for the society, it's very important that people to be included at the arrival to the financial system. Otherwise, they will create a life on economic parallel system. We try in a Welcome account to help first the organization that want to intervene in this stage. For instance, we did some operation with the NGOs like the Red Cross to distribute the first aid and cash transfer to refugee just after the Ukrainian crisis, and to help newcomers themselves to open easily a bank account and to have access to basic banking services.
Thank you for that answer. And now to move on to Francesco with more of a DFI view and maybe a macro view of these topics. What's your experience from a World Bank perspective, and what can the role of the private sector, or financial sector more specifically, be in this case?
Okay, thank you, Alexander. So first, a quick disclaimer: the views are my own and not the one of the bank or shareholder nations or senior management, just as it's mandatory at the beginning.
Of course.
So I'll try to frame a bit the topic as we discussed also in the preparation part. So the first element is about, I think we should divide it between migrants that arrive in a host country that is a developed country and migrants that arrive in a host country which is a developing country, because in both cases they will find a very different situation. So we have countries that do not have financial inclusion for their own citizens, so we could expect that in these cases there will be more difficulty actually to onboard this new set of population that lives in that territory. The second element that I think as in the work that we do is to promote an approach toward of the financial sector that is risk-based. So as he was mentioning, Raul was mentioning, these clients these potential clients should be assessed for the risk that they bring. And generally, a transactional account, which is the basic financial service just to make deposits and some payments and cash withdrawal, is a very low risk as long as the transaction turnover of the account is low. So low risk also means that the type of due diligence that the financial sector should do on those clients can be low. And I think this is very important because, of course, the bank can see these clients as a risk and as a cost, as they go outside what is the normal customer due diligence process they do for their own customers. They have different type of documents. They might not have documents. And in this sense, it's important that through standardization of processes, even though these are exceptional processes, it's possible for banks to reduce their costs. This is the first element. The second, to reduce costs for the management of these customers at a later stage of the engagement. So the use of digital channels rather than physical branches is something that allow to serve those customers for the financial sector. And I think here the bank, what it does is supports client countries in developing regulatory framework in developing countries that support tiered KYC, thus meaning that very few documents are asked at the moment of opening an account. Maybe there is no need for doing identity validation and verification, because maybe an ID system is not even present in the country. And only when the relation deepens with the person, then there is an opportunity to perform additional elements of identity verification and ensure that this person is not performing money laundering activities. There is also an element, I think, that's important for all the discussion that we have, that by allowing financial inclusion, we allow those people to thrive in the society by being part of the economic development of the society itself. So it's not only a problem, but it's per se an opportunity which should be managed. And in this sense, I think all our organization work to advance this agenda.
Thanks for that answer. And you mentioned something really interesting about the risk-based approach that retail banks would typically have. And I want to come back to Ro on welcome accounts specifically, because what you explained about the kind of de-risking journey could be quite interesting as well, especially as we go into the next question, which is about what happens when migrants and refugees stay.
Yeah, actually, we did a lot of study work to find out how we can de-risk this KYC process, because we are accountable to the central banks, to regulator, and our banking partners as well. And we figured out that working with NGOs and company, the newcomers or refugee or migrant, whatever you want call them, employers, their employers, working with them, de-risk a lot this KYC process. For instance, in our process today, we include in the onboarding process a certificate from the NGO that work with this person or the employer, and this little thing changed totally the behavior of our banking partners, and it was a very good news. For instance, with for Banque de France, the French Center Bank, because they manage every month in Paris 2,000 people that claim their right to have access to bank accounts. So I think we can find other solutions to de-risk, and as you mentioned, we can that we are doing to offer several stages of offering and access to people. So I think we can find, we did already a little part of the job, but there's more to do.
Thank you, and I see Yusra putting her hand up.
Yes, I wanted to bring another perspective. I understand we are in building bridges. The audience here and listening to us are financial sector professionals, but it's extremely important what both the colleagues have mentioned in terms of KYC, in terms of regulations. But what I want to bring into the perspective is the needs of this refugee that we are talking about. When they're at these early stages of displacement, what do they need first? They need a safe place to put the savings that they have brought with them when they are fleeing because of war, because of persecution. So they need to put this money safely so that it is not in the camp or in the tent, so they need a savings account. The second thing they would need as well is to have a payment service, a payment system that would allow them to access the cash that UNHCR or the other NGOs are providing, and also to receive the remittances from the country, from the families, from the friends that are relying to the situation and trying to help them, at least financially. So these are the two things that are needed, and they are, as Francisco was saying, the very low risk that a client, a potential client for a financial service provider would present. So in many countries where we are working, mostly and as you mentioned, there's a big difference if this person is fleeing to the north or is fleeing to the south with the country that have his own problems, his own financial non-inclusion of the nationals of the host communities. So there is also a difference that comes in there. So yeah, if anyone is listening here and that have any influence on the regulation or also on the perception of financial service providers, banks, or financial institutions, to take into consideration these different levels of risk, be it in the developing or on the developed world.
Thank you. And Carmen, yeah.
I might just add, so the key is, I think, to, at the very outset, when these needs are established for the financial professionals, so I am one of them, to actually make sure that we have the right structure in place that we can reach these people and provide access to the financial ecosystem of that particular region, country. So there goes a lot of skill, obviously, into it to make sure. So it's KYC, but it's also know your refugee, or know your migrant, or know your internally displaced person. So, so the key is that with digital ID or with actually registration processes, you can also de-risk this quite a bit. So the international organizations, UNHCR and others, they register these people, the most vulnerable, that we care for. And our job is basically to make sure that we can reach them in the most effective, efficient way. That could be with a transfer to a bank account, that we obviously advocate for bank accounts to be opened. That's one step. The other step could be mobile money. It could be also pushing money to a card provider. Or more recently, UNHCR also basically had one of its first of its kind use cases to actually use a blockchain for disbursements, to reach the beneficiaries directly on their phone, and within minutes these transfers actually can be done, and on the phone they can activate their app and they have access to these funds. So this is quite powerful. So we have the financial industry, we have the regulators, but we also have technology that can actually make a lot of things possible, including as well with the digital ID, the portability of the digital ID. So today, the arrival, but tomorrow something else will happen. So there's a trace, and we are not starting this over and over again, and the people need to start and restart. So I think it starts really at the very beginning. Whilst at the very beginning we have immediate aids in mind, but we're preparing the building blocks of going forward for these people to actually build upon.
Thank you for that. And Francesco, go ahead.
Yes, I think also another element which is important is probably a soft element, is that the financial sector of the host country is ready to relate, for example, with people that speak another language, or to provide material to explain what is the financial products that are present in the country itself, which may be different from the one of the country of origin. So in this sense, the communities of an host country can prepare themselves by, for example, providing material in different languages, preparing some form of brochures that explain the type of product, and also very important in the moment where cash transfer systems are implemented locally for supporting the livelihood of the people, to have processes to actually rapidly scale this intervention in the country, so that if you want to the next crisis, there is already a set of processes that can be enabled rapidly to disburse then to these people the subsidy that is needed. Because as Carmen's mentioning, there is, I think, a trend to move away from support in kind, unless this is needed because, for example, there is a scarcity of food in a given region, to give support, financial support, that then the people can decide to spend on their livelihood. Thank you.
So I think given the amount of conversations our panelists have been having around arrival, we can see how critical this is of a phase. And now we'll be moving on to staying, if the slides will behave. Well, we're on the right slide nonetheless. And with that, I'd like to give the first question to Yusra, as well as ask her to do a little bit of a presentation around the ILO programs. So, once refugees and migrants get settled, what additional, perhaps more complex and longer-term financial solutions do they need? And what's your experience been in that sector?
Thank you. So I'll start with the first part of the question, talking a little bit about what we do at the International Labour Organization and our intervention model. So I work in the social finance program within the International Labour Organization, and we actually try to engage with the financial sector, with banks, with financial cooperatives, microfinance institutions, insurers, impact investors, that have really this interest in terms of decent work, and that can help us into fulfilling the decent work agenda of the ILO. What does this mean really when we link this to displacement? So we have seen in many, many countries, and we've been talking about this, that there is a very strong tendency now to the protracted situation of refugees. So in a particular country, on average, a refugee will stay around 20 years. So this, combined with the scarcity of aid, combined with the extreme, the heightened level of crisis and of displacement all over in the world, this is leading the discussion to move for a particular situation, not, or to perhaps not completely move, but the discussion is also integrating the development agenda. We are not only talking about humanitarian crisis. Of course, it is extremely needed in the early displacement we were talking about in the beginning, but once this population is there for 5, 10, 15 years, then humanitarian aid is not the answer anymore, and the development and the integration of this population within the labor market of the countries, of the host countries, is becoming the solution. So from a development perspective, this is how the ILO, the International Labour Organization, is coming to the discussion. So in many countries, refugees, of course, with the right documentation, with the right everything, are welcomed to be integrated in the labor force, in the labor market, but unfortunately, in many others, they are not. So entrepreneurship, mostly in the informal sector, is more and more the solution that is there for them. But also, I mean, we have seen and we have met amazing entrepreneurs that are formalizing and that are, because of their brilliant ideas, are getting into the formal sector and also having access to all of what the ecosystem is providing. To all of this to say that when we talk about entrepreneurship, then finance comes into the discussion very, very quickly. And this is how we have developed, based on our knowledge and our experience in situations of non-displacement, in development situation, also with the challenges that we have identified in the countries we are working in terms of displacement, and we are mostly working in the Horn of Africa, in the MENA region. We are also working in Cameroon, we are working in Latin America, in some places in Asia. So it is mostly in the developing world. And we have identified common trends and common challenges that we tried to turn them into opportunities for the regulators, the policymakers, but most importantly for the financial service providers themselves and for the refugees. So the first aspect that you see in the slide there is the work around policy. And policy advocacy, so that migrants and refugees are included into the regulation and are recognized as being part of the that can be part of the financial sector, is extremely important. So I'll illustrate perhaps each one of these bullets with an example. So for example, we are working in Sudan, before, unfortunately, the situation that made that the people who are hosting refugees are becoming refugees themselves. So in Sudan, the banks don't recognize any ID. So national passport, refugee card that is provided by UNHCR, they don't recognize any of this, despite the fact that this is not written anywhere in the regulations of the central bank. So we are having discussions with the central bank so that they can issue a circular to the banks to tell them, please, you can open bank accounts and savings account to the refugees using whatever identification they have. So this kind of advocacy as well is something that we are working on. I don't remember that. I think it was Francesco talking before that sometimes the displacement is also an opportunity for the country to beef up the financial inclusion of everyone, hosts and refugees. And this was the case of Iraq, where the central bank, because we are working on the internal displacement crisis, they came to the ILO saying, we have an issue actually with SMEs, hosts, internally displaced, everyone. We cannot, banks, they don't accept to provide loans to SMEs. So we have shaped the whole program and intervention hand in hand with the central bank working also with some of the private banks in Kurdistan mostly, so that they can provide loans to entrepreneurs, to micro, small enterprises, hosts, and internally displaced. So this is also how we can turn, and how the governments can turn a challenge into an opportunity. So once more or less the regulation and the policy side is fine, then the second hurdle is the supply, is the banks, is the financial institutions that most of the time when they hear the word refugees, they see the risk blinking like this here. But the thing is that they don't realize that, of course, you cannot provide any type of service to any person, because one, you are putting this person in additional risk, but also it is risky for the financial institution. So one of our things that we really are doing with all of the financial institutions with whom we are working and that are willing and that are wanting to engage in this segment is, one, to show them and to make them understand that this is a market, meaning that there is benefits, of course, like any, we are talking to financial institutions, not to NGOs or to humanitarian actors, so that there is definitely something, it is a market, and you will have a return, a financial return, also a social return, because you will be engaging in a social activity and integrating a population that is vulnerable and excluded. Capacity building and technical assistance have proved to be extremely useful. So we have a training that we take the partner financial service provider through, and we realized that only having a training is not enough. We really need to take them and to be with them hand in hand in understanding, in looking and doing market research within this market segment, and shaping based on the needs of this population in this particular area where they want to be active, to create and to shape financial products to answer the particular needs of these institutions. So now in Kenya, in Uganda, in Ethiopia, in Iraq, many of our partners are at that level where they have shaped the products, they have the specifications of the product, and they are starting very soon to pilot test them. So when the financial service providers are ready with those products, we also need to have the refugees and the host communities ready to take those products, which means that they need to know what it means to engage with a financial institution, what it means to take a loan, what it means to have a savings account, how to choose between one and the other, how to choose between one loan and the other, and one institution and the other. And this is happening through training on financial education, and we have an international program on financial literacy at the ILO, and we have come up with a specific program on financial education for refugees and host communities that we are deploying also on the countries where we are working. And this seems to also reduce the perceived risk of the clients. This financial education training, coupled with entrepreneurship training, where also we help the entrepreneurs, migrants or host community members, to go to the bank with the right discourse, knowing to speak the language of the bank, with a business plan and with an idea of a business that is well calculated, well explained. This also reduces tremendously the level of risk that is perceived by the institution. So yeah, this is our intervention, and in discussing also earlier within the panel, we have realized that this is also many of the institutions that work at those three levels, at the policy, at the supply and the demand, hoping really that the combination of the three of these will lead to access to finance and access to sustainable finance for refugees and migrants.
Thank you, Yusra. And I'd like to keep the framework up and actually ask this question again in the context of it. And I'd like our panelists to choose where exactly they'd like to answer it, where, how do you deal, in your experience, with these more complex financial solutions that are required when refugees and migrants are staying in a country or are traveling to another country and perhaps staying there? Francesco, would you like to start us off?
Yes, I build on what the user just said. I think one of one of the aspects the bank works a lot is, of course, regulation. As mentioned, I mean, we do similar type of work. But specifically, the team that I'm part of works to build with the financial sector systems that can allow, for example, payments to flow between the financial sector actor. And one of the trends that is very visible is fast payment. So fast payment system here in Switzerland, we have Twint as a, let's say, a consumer brand for this type of payment. And we see that over 100 countries have implemented or are about to implement this fast payment system, which again ties to the transactional account. And what is interesting that the adoption of this type of services, transactional services, builds some form of story for an account holder. This being let's say a consumer, this being an informal entrepreneur, or this being even a formal entrepreneur. And building this financial history then allows actually to deepen the financial relation with the institution, which is the path toward integration. And so it's possible, of course, we see as a basic services. For example, I work in Nigeria. There are fintech that start to offer inventory management to SMEs based, so inventory financing to SME based on the transaction of their current account. So this is very, very strange product to a certain extent, because the refunding takes place day by day of 1/30 of the amount. But it's based on transactional account. So by promoting the transition toward digital financial services, we create more data, and then this data can be used for deepen the financial inclusion. Then there is an aspect, maybe a little bit more skewed toward what we also was discussing in the morning. There are some use cases that maybe require a co-investment from the public and the private sector, where the financial sector is not able to actually assess the risk and then is withdrawing from an investment. And here it's like organization like ours that can actually play a role in facilitating, also because we are part of the processes of creating these projects, or the government of the country is actually investing and vetting the SMEs, and then the financial sector say, okay, if the government is, I don't know, placing some guarantee or having a process for vetting these SMEs, then it's worth the investment. And I think there are a lot of successful cases around the world.
Thank you. And I want to pick up on 2 points for our next speakers. One, you mentioned the story that can be built using financial data, and the other, the fast payments. So first, with the story being built with financial data and accessibility to financial services, Rua, I'd like you to speak a little bit about this in the context of the neobank that you've started.
Regarding to the accessibility?
The financial story that can be created over time with financial data.
Actually, it's very important, and as you mentioned, people come and they don't. We don't have access to their financial history, and but how we can manage that? So we give them access to the basic products, to let them to start their financial life here, to let their employers or NGO sponsors to help them, their family to send them money, and to reassure that we know their financial sources. And this is very important for regulators. Where comes the funds of every person, because we have to assess about money laundering, terrorism finance, etc., etc. And as you mentioned, when you say to refugee, for traditional actors, it's the red flag, alert, money laundering, fraud, tourism, finance. And by giving them access to this system and studying data, we can assess this is a regular person. We know the source of their funds. We know this person deal with this company and or receive their funds from these NGOs. And during the time, we can assess, okay, you are ready to go to the next step, have access to international transfer, giving some loan and this kind of additional access on product.
Thank you for that. And I'm turning to Carmen now, where we were talking about fast payments. And here in the financial data story, there's an aspect of transparency as well, right? So I'd like to hear a little bit more on your take for this topic.
Yes. So the source of funds is obviously needs to be followed through. So basically to be able to follow through the funds, the money, so you follow the money, follow the data, transparency, accountability, but above all as well to actually build that trust, the trust on all sides. So for the recipient, for the ecosystem, for the financial ecosystem, and to be able to build upon. So the trust is really key on that. And to be able to manage the data, with all the data protection, of course, with the privacy, and to make sure that, you know, we have an orderly way of executing payments and also receipts. So the right to earn, the right to spend, I think this is what this is about. So people can go about their lives, whether it is still getting the funds from the international community to sustain, or even better, to be able to go forward with that transparency to build their own business, their own livelihoods, and basically grow from there. And the argument here is also that economic growth will come from that. I think what is also important, we mentioned that, is digital literacy, financial literacy, all the education part really needs to be increased. So people really start to understand how they actually are part of that system, specifically for using digitalization and wallets. So probably all of us have intervened at some point on our wallets to receive or to spend money. And we all have that experience the first time where we activate a wallet, and then actually does it work, does it not work, and how easy actually it can work. So it's to overcome these initial steps and to make sure that access is facilitated, but like we just concluded, access in itself doesn't do it all. So there are really various elements that come with it, and to be able to make sure that all these people, all of us, can really participate economically in that ecosystem, and the financial part of it and the traceability, the accountability is obviously key.
Thank you. And I don't know if the audience noticed, but we've gone through looking at this thematic area as something related to risk. And from the past few minutes, we're really looking into a sector of opportunity and growth. And with that, I'd like us to move to the last bit, which is about you, about attendees in this room, at this conference, online. And this is our panelists pretty much telling you what the first steps should be for all financial institutions in this building bridges. You know, how can they take up this opportunity? And I'd like to start with Yusra on this.
Mine is very, very, very practical and down to earth. When I was talking earlier, I was mentioning the different financial service providers with whom we are working in Africa, in the MENA region. and that we have reached with many of them that level where we have shaped together the products that they want to provide to the market, to the refugees, and to host communities, and they are really starting now at the verge of starting to pilot test. One of the hurdles that they find is that post-COVID crisis, where their own operations have shrunk tremendously, they have really faced a lot of issues in terms of their own clients not reimbursing, really having, so their portfolio have shrunken. And also, many of them are banks, so that they are regulated by the central bank, and they have certain prudential ratios that they need to obey by, and hence it means that if they are going to take a risk, which they are going to take, because this is, even though it's in a small, just trying, it is still a risk that they are taking that the central bank won't allow them to take without increasing the capital. So if any of the financial service provider, the banks, the investors that are present here in this room or watching now live or watching later and would like to engage and to help to help this population in Kenya, in Uganda, in Ethiopia, in Iraq, in Lebanon, you can definitely come to us and we can facilitate discussions with these institutions. Just to give you some of the examples. Shabele Bank in Ethiopia, they have embarked with us in this journey of availing financial services to refugees while they were doing their transformation from a non-bank financial institution to a banking institution, to show you how this subject was strong in their hearts, and how even when they were going through the transformation, they added a layer of work and for them and uncertainty. So what they would like to do and to start testing with the refugees is group loans. They also want to, they have an electronic wallet that they have been providing to host communities, and they want to deploy it around and within the camps for refugees as well, and to extend the usage of it for both host communities and refugees so that it can be used to disperse and reimburse, to disperse the loan and to reimburse the installments. So this is what they are working on and they want to test. In Sudan, Ibda' Bank, they are working, so the financial system in Sudan, if you know, is very, very basic. So they are working, they started working when they work with the host community, with their usual clients. They work mostly around savings groups. So they want to formalize these informal savings groups and link them to the bank, so that these savings groups, they put their savings within the bank, but also those savings will serve as a guarantee and or as a kind of a joint collateral for the group members for another stage, so that they can take loans. Ibda', after the situation and after the displacement that have touched many of the Sudanese, but also some of the staff of the bank, they were agile in their thinking, and they are trying to say, okay, we cannot operate and have all of these great plans that we had in Sudan. Actually, we want to readapt and to serve our clients who have fled Sudan, mostly to go to Egypt. And many of the staff of the bank are in Egypt, and we are talking with them and trying to see how they can recreate some services for their old clients, talking about portability of the financial history. They know them, they know how creditworthy they are, so they can also serve them in their displacement. I can also tell you about Longitude Finance in Kenya, where they are thinking about 3 different loan products for working capital and for investment, as well as 1 product for remittances and money transfer. Or Equity Bank Uganda, with whom the main thing that came out is we really need to digitize our processes for host communities and refugees. And this, again, speaks to the opportunities that for financial service providers, sometimes displacement or looking at a new segment will also bring to the overall base of clients. So they want to digitize not only the products, but the processes and also the distribution channels to refugees and to hosts as well. and they want to work more on targeted savings. They have realized that their savings products that are just off the shelf were not very successful, so they found that they needed to have specific targeted products by objective, both for refugees and host communities. So this is just an example to share with you and to let you know what are the type of services that the institutions are looking at in order to better serve the refugees and the hosts. So voilà, in case you want to engage more as an investor or as a bank, please reach out.
Thank you. And very, very concrete examples of how the financial sector can get involved. I was hearing themes around different product structures and digitization, and I know, Francesco, we were speaking a little bit about that with you earlier today. Do you mind sharing your thoughts around the roles of these two things in how the financial sector can get involved with refugees and migrants?
Yes, so one point is that for the financial sector, these are potential customers that of course can be a source of profit, a source of revenues and a source of profit. They are having specific products that would be immediately, let's say, of interest for them, like remittances. I think the World Bank data shows that currently the average fees on remittances are around 6.93% of the value that is remitted globally as a global average. So it's a profitable business, despite considering that, of course, the agents that perform the cash in and the cash out take a portion of this 7%. And we see in this specific service that already digitization offers efficiency gains, where the cost drops to around 4.8%, I think, for sending digital remittances. So these are customers that can be put at the center of the financial sector interest for actually serving them, and they can bring value. And in this sense, the financial sector has an opportunity to create products that serve those interests as first point. The second point, I do a step back and I go back to the moment of arrive. I think there is a big difference here again between developed countries and developing countries. For the developing countries, policymakers, regulators have a great opportunity to create a risk-based framework for initial access and building systems that allow them to have convenient services. At the end, convenient services is what will make people passing from using cash toward the financial sector. And this formalization is an important step to also be included in the society. Not only for the migrants, but also for the people of the country. I think these two aspects are my final remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to move to Carmen. In times of crisis, humanitarian aid, especially cash disbursements, have to move fast across borders. And in more protracted crises, these types of solutions also have to be implemented. How do you see the financial sector being involved in this situation?
Yes, so the financial sector has a great role to play to use technology. So we have seen with our first use case using blockchain. So the speed, is phenomenal. How we can access people with that system. Also, to be able to have a safe store of value in digital assets to be held on their phones, give them all the options going forward, so they can use the money right now for those who need it right now. They can also safeguard it and for a different time. They can also go cross-border and in cash. The key here is really to have as many options as possible, but technology definitely plays a role, but also going further, what we just discussed is really the investment community has here a great opportunity to put their capital forward for actually very decent returns to accelerate the growth perspectives in each and in every their country. So these people are not there waiting to get aid months after months. These people want to go about their lives. And I think the call to action here is really for investment groups to make available capital and put it to work at a very decent return, either to provide guarantees for specific economic developments at that level, or obviously also we haven't talked about sustainable financing in greening or bluing the planet for water, for obviously getting energy wherever they are. So there's so much to do, but on that very micro level of financing, it probably will not do actually what is needed. So I think the call is really to put forward all this capital that is available for investment as well. So protracted problems or refugee situations, they need to be resolved in completely different ways, that they can participate in the economic activity of that particular area or country. So, and we have seen it over and over again. Any of us who go into a refugee area, we will see that people are incredibly active, incredibly have an imagination unbelievable, and they go about their things. We would be all very surprised actually to see this. So I think it's the engagement of the international investment community as well to look at this as a real opportunity and not as a problem.
Thank you for that. And Ro, I'd like to ask you, from a perspective of somebody that's been through this journey in a personal sense and who's actually created a solution for a problem which you mentioned you didn't have too much of, but many others did, and a problem that is considered niche for large retail banks, yet your solution potentially addresses a market of over 100 million people worldwide. What is your view on how the financial sector can contribute to this overall mission?
Actually, this niche is a huge niche, and it will be bigger soon, not just because of crisis, because of the world. We are in a mobility world. People move, and I think we have to be open to these movements. I believe you mentioned several ways that why we have to consider refugees and immigrants as an opportunity. And one of these aspects that I'm thinking of is I think they can evolve our system culturally. We are in a system, a financial system and financial culture in the Western world that based in institutional, individual relation toward money. This is how Western financial system evolved and took place. In the other part of the world, almost in Africa, in Asia, and in South America, people have a different relationship with money, a collective approach, a peer-to-peer approach, and a social approach to money. And you mentioned people have a saving groups, and when people come here, they manage their life like that. You may ask yourself how the people that don't have access to, for instance, loan can buy a car or a house by sharing their own assets together and let the others have access to these assets. I think this culture of finance, this relationship with financial system and with money can have a positive impact in our system, in our financial system, that we know this financial system needs to a huge reform. And this reform can start with us as user, as client, but us, because me as a actor in financial system, as an organization. So, for instance, in Welcome Account, we develop exactly the same solution, but to formalize this saving group, to let people to share their financial asset to buy a house, to rent something, to finance their children's education. And they do so for real right now, but informally. But I think if we, regulators and banks, remain themselves open to absorb and to host this culture in their business models, we can evolve our financial culture for the best.
Thank you. And with that, that closes the formal part of the panel discussion, but we'd still like to open the floor to questions. And we have 2 hands.
Hello, my name is Elaine Franz from Flow in Action. Thank you so much for all of that information. I'm very interested to sort of throw something in here, which is if we continue without taking climate action and we go along the trajectory of 2.7 degrees warming, how would you see us in 2033? How might these solutions that you're creating now apply to all of us as we all become climate refugees and climate migrants?
Anybody want to tackle this question first? Any other question?
Yes, I have a question as well. Hi, my name is Shruti Satish, and I am from the Graduate Institute. I do not have a background in finance or any type of policy in that, but I do want to ask a question to Yusra about the ILO. What kind of financial products do you serve to refugees and migrant communities? And does this happen in a capacity building sense? Does this happen for youth? Does this happen majority for adults? I would like to get more information on that. Thank you.
One last question.
Thank you so much. Just to follow up on the last point and the question to Mr. Savard, but also the other panelists. First off, I should start by saying congratulations and thank you for the services that you provide. I work in refugee camps, and this is indeed a very critical need. But sort of to ask, what would be an illustration of the ways that we, as in the West, can learn from the traditions and the practices that you mentioned in your last interventions? What are ways and examples? And number 2, kind of in the same vein, are there ideas, practices outside the Western Bloc, right, to provide this type of services that are not being discussed today or we could emulate? Thank you.
So Yusra, and then we can tackle the last question, and that gives our panelists the time to think about what happens in 12 years from now.
So yes, thank you for your question. The ILO, we are not a bank, we are not a financial institution, we don't provide loans ourselves, but we help institutions and financial service providers, for instance, to provide services to refugees, to entrepreneurs, to women, to youth, to all of the target groups that the ILO deals with, this in particular situation, refugees or migrants. So part of what we do is capacity building. So we have developed a lot of trainings that really take the financial institutions through the different parts of building an institution, a financial institution that can answer the needs. So we can, the training would deal with risk evaluation and risk management. It will deal with HR and incentives for staff. It can deal with clients and how to deal with them, to reach them in the right way, and to keep them engaged with the institution, and so on and so forth. We have realized that when we are talking, actually this was first tested in Congo, when we have trained an institution that wanted to reach youth, and we realized that training was not enough. They really needed more hand-holding, because this was really the first time that they are diving into youth. When you say youth, most importantly, it is startups. So the risk is huge, and the product is difficult for institutions that have never done it. So we have paired or followed up on the training on the capacity building by technical assistance, which means that we had someone from the financial sector who was there for the institution at the important moments of the understanding the market, of synthesizing the information that is coming from the market and crossing it with the institutional capacity. What, as an institution, can we do this or cannot we, or we can't? If we cannot, but it's important, then we need to build our capacity in this specific point. So this technical assistance and hand-holding at the very important parts of developing the product, then this becomes very important. So we, up to now, in the institutions with whom we are working on the displacement space, no one has come up specifically with products for youth. So usually their products start from 2025 till 60, 65, and usually they will ask for existence of the business. They don't want to add to the risk of this new segment the risk of a startup, of the business risk. So this is where we are for now.
Ro?
Actually, how we can learn from others. I think today with the digital revolution, we can revolutionize and evolve our system. And as you know, especially in fintech, mobile money was massively used 10 years, 15 years ago in Africa and in China. While for now it's a new product. The crypto asset as well. Actually, in the Western country, we are not early adopters. We are the latest adopters in the world. Because we are fine with our situation. But we don't understand that the world is changing very fast. And we have to learn from others. And I think this the immigration market is for us and could be a laboratory of this financial behavior change in the world, to learn from others, to let startups, because for us, for instance, the saving product, if we develop it today for instance, French market, we need 10 years to develop and to adopt massively this product. While with immigrant community, we need just 6 months to have our first client bases, because these are the people that are early adopter, they are available, and they are curious, and they don't have a ancient culture and behave of financial system use. So I think investing in the immigration market will be a very good investment to not just this market, but to the whole innovation ecosystem.
Thank you. Francesco, you wanted to say something there?
Yes, I'll try to answer the question. The first on what we can learn from other markets. And I think, for example, the saving groups is a good example that is very popular in many countries. It's rotational yearly, so several people put a contribution every year, and then either loans, free interest loans are awarded to a person on a rotational basis, or in some countries, just at the end of the year, they give to each participant a portion that they have saved during the years. So I think digitization gives the opportunity today to scale this. So if I build the software for managing a saving group in Botswana, why I cannot then just use the same software to sell the same product here, or in Nigeria if there is the same bank that is present in both countries. So this is something that is very interesting and allows to transfer the way to do business. Then there is a second element, is that some products are not they are custom to a specific market, because maybe in that specific market there are peculiar way of doing a certain business. For example, I was working in a market where they had the funeral insurances, which was something completely new for me. And this was because there was a monopoly on graveyards, and they were putting the prices very high for graveyards. So very peculiar niche product, but this doesn't mean that cannot be replicated someone else. And going on the question on climate refugees. So I think if all the world, when all the world might be subject to extreme events, then of course we can foresee that there will be more extreme events, and so more people will actually be forced to deal with those. So I think the international community and many countries are working both on adaptation to these events and also mitigation of the effects that are happening. What we see that the financial sector can do is to create instruments, for example, working a lot on insurance in the agricultural sector, to be more present, because we know that the variability of the weather is increasing, and therefore there might be the need for more coverage for the farmers. This, of course, has a cost. It's not free, but it's part of the overall effort to deal with the changes that, as a humanity, we are facing to the planet. So I think this is, my answers, attempts of them.
And I just wanted to add, of course, we all would benefit from this solution. So the key is that today we know who are the refugees and the migrants and the internally displaced and so forth, but overall there are about 350 million people in need of aid, and we could become one of them, and therefore the solutions that we would rely upon are pretty much what we're discussing here now, and have really preparedness and readiness for these emergencies, and that we actually can have solutions to go. So we would need much more leveraging of solutions from other regions, from these regions, and also particularly using technology, what we discussed, and the new technology. And there could be a breakthrough in this way using blockchain, for example, also ID, digital identity, obviously respecting data protection and privacy. But ultimately, we are creating the financial system's livelihoods for all of us, and inclusive, unfortunately, if actually climate is to hit us hard. So I think we should all get engaged, and that's why I was saying that there is huge opportunity to make investments, to free up capital, to look at these new business models, new technologies, and put them to use. So we are a little bit in a waiting pattern in that sense, but it's the call to action, especially building bridges, having financial institutions here, the public sector, the private sector. This is really an appeal to come together and build these solutions.
Thank you. And I think with that, I'd like to thank our panelists for their views and insights. I'd like to thank the audience for your engagement and your questions. We have one last question. We have 32 seconds.
Seconds just to say, if we look back to the time when the UN conventions and protocols were drafted, the world was a very different place. Quite rightly, we need to be looking forward the next 25 years, where again we'll be dealing with a different reality. To the speaker in the middle, thank you. There's a lot of interest now in community-based economic activity, short food chains, nature-based solutions to water and waste, energy, sustainable energy, both in Poland and in Europe generally. But we have yet to convince investors that this is not only a viable economic model, it rebuilds society, it creates resilience. And so I hope that this, with the ILO's social and solidarity economy approach, could be a line of investigation going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then with that, thank you all for your time today, and hope to see you next year at Building Bridges. Thank you.